Hey ladies, welcome to Until I Find Him. I'm sorry that it took so long to get another video up for you, but when you work in the retail business, November and December tend to be absolutely ridiculously crazy and you never have time to do anything but work in the store. But I have had time to really think about this next devotional, and it's something that I think is pretty important to me, and I'm pretty excited about this topic that we're doing. The last video we talked about how good looks don't really always mean that it's going to be a good heart or it's going to be a good relationship. And we talked about the importance of your heart matching your husband's and matching God's heart. And so in this video we're actually going to take a little bit of a detour from princesses. I know. We will come back to them, I promise. But God has been dealing with me a lot about time and how I'm spending it and how I'm using my free time and how I'm using basically the time that He's given me. And I recently discovered that I have a really bad habit of counting hours. I will literally count hours till when I have to be at work. I will count hours when I'm at work. I will count hours when I'm at home. I'll count hours when I'm in my car. I'll literally count the hours that I'm sleeping before I have to get up, and then I'd count the hours that I had free time, and I'd keep counting, and I'd keep counting, and I'd keep counting, and it drives me nuts, and God is trying really hard to break me of that process, and I began to realize through that I am not using my free time and using the precious hours that I have the way that I should all the time. So, something that also came up in my head was that sometimes being single equals way too much free time. And sometimes you don't know what to do with yourself because you have all this time. And really, being single is the only time that your life is truly about you. You can go wherever you want, you can do whatever you want, you could drop everything, go halfway across the world on a mission trip if you really wanted to, or you could spend your time sitting around doing nothing. And you have all the time in the world to just be you. But I think sometimes it's not such a good thing for everybody, and sometimes we don't use our free time the way that we should. And really, when you think about it, time is a really weird thing, because there's kind of two types of time. One is our time and one is God's time, and they work completely different. It's ridiculous. But we view time as right here, right now, things that are happening right in this moment, or we view them as things that have happened in the past, or we view them as things that are going to happen in the future. Whereas God's time works completely different. He's seen everything. He's done it all. He's seen it all. He's planned it all. He already knew what was going to happen. And so time doesn't run the same way for Him. There is no limit to time for Him. There is no now, past, future. It just is. And so I think that's why sometimes things don't go the way that we want them to go when we want them to go. Because we are not living in God's time. We're living in our own time. And so while I was thinking about all this and, just praying to God about what I should be doing with my free time and how I should be doing things differently, He took me to Ecclesiastes 8, 1 through 8. So Ecclesiastes 8 verses 1 through 8. And this is what it says. It says, "Who is like the wise man? Who knows the explanation of things? Wisdom brightens a man's face and changes its hard appearance. Obey the king's command, I say, because you took an oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Do not stand up for a bad cause, for he will do whatever he pleases. Since a king's word is supreme, who can say to him, 'What are you doing?' Whoever obeys his command will come to no harm, and the wise will know the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter though a man's misery weighs heavily upon him. Since no man knows the future, who can tell him what is to come? No man has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has the power over the day of his death. So, in verse 1, it says, who knows the explanation of things? We have no idea. No idea of the plans that God has for us and when they're going to happen. We have no idea when the proper time and place is for things. Only God does. And really, that's the point. Faith is believing in things you can't see. Faith is knowing that even though we don't have an explanation for things, God does. And He's never going to leave us without an explanation. And I think a lot of the time we get it in our head that we need to know everything and control everything. Because apparently that's just part of human nature. But in verse 2, it says, obey the king's command. You took an oath before God. I thought that was like really cool, because when you pray for something and you put it in God's hands, it's your job from then on out to trust that He's going to do what He needs to do, or what He wants really in your life. And when you do that, you're kind of taking an oath with Him that you're trusting Him, and you're not going to ask questions. You're not going to doubt and fear that things aren't going to turn out the right way. And so, I kept telling myself, God has never ever made a promise to me that He hasn't kept. He has never ever told my family anything that He hasn't come through on. He got us a home. He led us to a new church that we love and adore, and He gives us everything. He takes care of us no matter what. And sometimes I think it's a hard choice to trust God, because we're not living in His time and we're not leaving things in His hands. In verse 3 through 4, it says, do not be in a hurry to leave God, the king's presence. This kind of really hit me hard. Because I kept asking myself, how am I using my time as a single person? How am I using the time that God has given me? Why am I always in such a hurry to do things myself and to be in control of things? Why am I always in a hurry to leave the king's presence, to leave God's presence and run wherever I want to run? And I had to ask myself if how I was using my free time honored God or not. And my answer was tough, because most of the time it's no. God calls us to sacrifice everything to Him, including our time. And He wants me to grow and learn and improve during this point of singleness. He wants me to go after Him with everything, with reckless abandonment, before I meet the husband that He has for me. And so, then I started thinking about reckless abandonment and what it meant, and thinking about examples of reckless abandonment in the Bible. And I found what I think is the absolute perfect one, and it's in Luke 7:36 through 50. Basically, in this story, Jesus went and He was having dinner at a Pharisee's house, and a whole bunch of people had gathered. He had all of His disciples with Him, and this woman comes in, and everybody knows this woman, and they know that she's not a very good person and that she's lived a really sinful life, and she was basically considered a prostitute. But she came in with an alabaster jar, just this little jar, and she broke it and anointed Jesus from head to toe, washed His feet, and it's just amazing. But let me explain why this is such an example of reckless abandonment. It's not just because she came in and, acted like a crazy person, dropping jars all over Jesus. That's not the point. An alabaster jar was literally everything she had. like literally, like you save up all your money and you buy this one jar. This was literally her dowry, her life savings. This is what she was going to use when she got married to give to the man that was going to marry her. This was everything she had in life. And she literally poured out her life on Jesus. Her faith was great enough to completely give it all. And I realized how much I need to use my time to go after God as much as possible. And how I need to break open all of these jars that I've been holding on to, all of these jars of frustration and broken dreams and just these things that I insist on holding on to. And I need to go after God. And I need to seek out God moments instead of waiting around for a husband to fall out of the sky. Because let's face it, ladies, it's not going to happen. Rating men is not an actual real-life occurrence. And my time is better spent becoming a stronger woman of God, so that way I can be the wife that my husband needs me to be. And so let's go back a little bit to Ecclesiastes, verses 5 through 8. It says, "Whoever obeys his command will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter, though a man's misery weighs heavily upon him. Since no man knows the future, who can tell him what is to come? No man has power over the wind to contain it." Everything that needs to happen will happen. And God designs everything so that it unfolds in His time and not yours. And I really like the verse that says that, "For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter, though a man's misery weighs heavily upon him." So even when I'm so upset and so single, I know that it's what you do in the waiting that makes everything worth it. And that there is a proper time and a proper place for everything. And so I just want to ask you a couple of questions. What are you doing with your time? I mean, are you living in reckless abandonment and going after everything God has for you? Or are you holding on to a jar of frustration? Are you holding on to the fact that you're single and being brokenhearted instead of running with it? Are you avoiding opportunities to go and do because you're afraid that you'll miss your man? Are you avoiding a missions trip because you're afraid if you leave the country, it could be that 1 week that you're gone, that your man would fall out of the sky? Are you avoiding taking a new job because you're afraid that it'll take too much of your time and you'll never find a man? Are you not following through with your talents because you're afraid that it'll hinder you somehow? Are you letting God show you how good life can be in the waiting? Really, it's my choice, and I am taking the choice to pursue God with as much reckless abandonment as I can. I am not going to sit around anymore. I have to believe that that's what my husband would want me to do anyways. Because if he's really the man of God that I've been asking for, he would never, ever in a million years want me to sit around waiting for him. He would want me to seek out my purpose and my calling. I've got to take a hold of God's promises and run. So really today, my prayer for you is simply this. Stop waiting for it to start raining men and start living the life that God has planned for you. And I promise the wait is worth it.